Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our November edition of the ABA Engineering Academy's engineering webinar. This is a series of webinars that we've been producing for several months now, mainly because of COVID-19. We can't have on-site webinars or seminars, so we've been doing these type webinars, and they've been really well accepted. These are actually produced by the ABA Engineering Academy uh, and with the assistance of the Alabama, Georgia, and the South Carolina broadcast associations. Our co-host, John George, is in parts unknown today. I'm not sure where he went off somewhere and said he wouldn't be able to be with us today, so he'll return and be back with us next week. We have this program or this series of seminars is actually underwritten by our corporate sponsor, which is Bond Broadcast Services. And this is a full service facility that does service work and also does full service equipment sales and all. So if you have any need for engineering services or any type of equipment, make sure that you contact Bond Broadcasting Service. And we appreciate him underwriting all the activities that we do here with the Engineering Academy. For those of you who are interested, our normal classes, our radio and television classes, we had to put on hold because of the pandemic, but we have created a series of videos for both radio and television, and they are available on the ABA Engineering Academy YouTube site. If you're interested in those, just send me an email and we can get you signed up and you can view those as well. Well, we have two guests up today. We actually have one right at the top of the hour here that we want to talk to. Mark Johnson, I see Mark is with us now, and Mark is with Link Up Communications. And I asked Mark if he would be so kind to join us and actually talk a little bit about the timetable for actually the C-band repack that's fixing to actually get started next month, I believe. And Mark, you with us today? I think.
Yep. Larry, I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you for having me. I know you got a lot of important information coming up with your other guests, but I do want to update everyone on where we're at with the 5G transition. Fortunately, all of the major networks, whether those are commercial networks like Premier, Westwood, Skyview, of course, doing Alabama and Auburn sports, and then on the Christian radio network group, Amboss and things like that, on SES2. Those have all moved to the higher frequencies where they will be away from the 5G interference when it begins, and the auction will actually begin for those frequencies in the top 56 markets, which will include Birmingham, Atlanta, I believe Memphis is in there as well, New Orleans. So those top 46 markets, top 46 markets, the auction will begin in December, and they will have access to those frequencies in December of 2021. So if you're near, in and around, close to one of these markets, it's imperative that you go ahead and schedule the filter installation if you took the lump sum, or if you decided to stay in the pool of downlinks that will be handled by SES. It's important that you answer the question from their, integrator on this situation, the folks that are doing the outreach, and that would be a company called USSI. So I've gotten a lot of emails from and questions from people on social media saying, "Hey, who's this USSI, and should I answer their call?" Absolutely, they are going to give you if you did not take the lump sum, but if you are in the category of those that SES is responsible for, they're giving you the solution to make sure that your content delivery system stays whole, stays active. And so your ability to pick up programming, whether that's a morning show from Premiere or a talk show from Westwood One or sports from Skyview, ESPN, regardless of which one of those programs off of SES 11 you are taking, it is critical and important that you begin the process of what we call 5G mitigation. So that's protecting this free delivery source that you have, because you're not paying monthly for that satellite time. That's being paid for by Westwood One. And the mitigation is either being paid for in the lump sum or being paid for by SES, who will get reimbursed by the clearinghouse. And all of that money is going to start rolling in on the auctions. So if you got a lump sum, realize that the auction is just now taking place. There'll be, some period of time where they have to pay into that, and then it'll take time to clear. So if you went for the lump sum, I would not be surprised if it were sometime like this time next year before you started to see those payments go out. So that wouldn't surprise me. I'm not saying that's the date, because there is no clear date on that. But there's a series of things that have to be done before you get that lump sum. But whether or not you get that lump sum does not slow down 5G coming to your particular area. Let's say you're in the Birmingham, to Huntsville to Nashville corridor there. You're going to, a year from now, they're going to start firing up 5G in your marketplace. And you're going to have to go ahead and do that mitigation, because if you have an issue later down the line between you and Verizon or you and AT&T, I'm sure the first question the FCC is going to ask is, okay, so what'd you do with the money we gave you? So it's more than just putting a filter in. It's making sure it's tuned, aligned, and well documented. And there's a whole series of things that SES and Intelsat will be doing to those customers who stayed in. And we recommend that if you opted out, to get somebody who will do the exact same things. We'll be doing those for SES and Intelsat. And we have that procedure. So, we can help you there. But the big key is, and what I hope you'd take away from this is, if you didn't take the lump sum, answer the phone, get back to USSI, answer their questions. If you did take the lump sum, get in line to have professionals take care of your 5G mitigation and get ready for this, because the FCC has told SES and Intelsat nothing is slowing this train down. Not COVID, not supply chains, nothing. They're rolling ahead, and they have no intention of slowing down. So that's kind of the update, Larry.
Okay, if anybody has any questions, how would they get a hold of you to get to some answers from them?
Well, they can always reach me by email. It's Mark, M-A-R-K, at linkupcommunications.com, L-I-N-K-U-P, communications with S on the end.com. Or they can call the office, 703-378-5090, 703-378-5090. And we're always here to help.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And I guess the bottom line is, don't don't sit on your hands on this project. It's got to be done.
Yeah, it's SES and Intelsat actually asked the FCC, "Hey, look, we got supply chain issues. We may not get some of these new satellites up in time. Can we slow this train down?" Nope, not slowing down for anything.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. We appreciate you being with us, and I encourage people to contact Mark at Link Up Communications if you have any additional questions for him. We want to talk now with our another guest that we have on, Richard Hickey. Richard has been with us actually on site at some of our engineering academy programs here in Alabama, and I think I met him back. My gracious, back in the early 1990s, I suppose, that when he was working with flash technology. He's been involved in coordinating the making sure that all the legal and things that the FCC and the FAA puts out about tower lighting and tower marketing and all is compliant. So, Richard, we want to invite you. We're happy to have you with us today, and I'm going to turn the program over to you. Richard's got a nice PowerPoint that he's going to present. So, Richard, I'll turn the program over to you now.
Thank you, Larry. I do appreciate it. It's always good to hear from you. And of course, when you talk about our teenage days back in the 1990s as well, just starting in the business, fresh out of high school, both of us, I know. Mark Johnson, always a wealth of knowledge and great comments there. I was taking notes throughout that, and I'll probably be back in touch with you as well to ask further questions, get some more answers. So I was asked to put this together, and I love being with the Alabama Broadcasters Association. Been there many times, but
make sure you share your screen because I don't see your PowerPoint.
Sorry about that. Do you see it now?
Yeah, there it is.
Okay, good to go. Good to go. So, you know, I put this together, and I didn't want to go back to all the basics and you know, start with what type of lighting, like we've done through the years. Broadcast engineers have been awfully good with that, and are, as a group, one of the most knowledgeable groups that I've spoken to. But I did want to bring you up to speed on some of the latest entries and some of the things that I see out in the field, but things from the FAA. And lo and behold, they just issued a new advisory circular 70/7460-1M yesterday. So we've got really fresh information here. Just a quick word. I was with Flash Technology for almost 17 years. Then I was a consultant and, pardon me, worked with a service company, gradually came to Vertical Bridge, and you know, it's just been great to be able to work with their program and their attitude of, you know, compliance without compromise. So staying up on this, of course, I hope I can help you understand new regulations. So just a quick thing, we're going to go through the FCC and FAA as always. I usually start with that. Then I want to talk about, when you're talking about new rules, what is unaffected as well, the grandfathered rules, and then the updated rule changes from the last AC and the new one, what it's all about. So one of the big questions that always comes up is someone will say, hey, you know, it's like the old days. 1996, the FCC overrode the FAA on basically any marking lighting decision. Well, in the first of 96, when they did the rewrite of the Title 47, Part 17 rules, the FCC gave the FAA more authority. They recognized them. So you have to kind of work with that as well. If you've got an older tower that was filed prior to 1996, then the FCC rules are still the dominant rules that you have to follow. You go by the determination of the day. Normally, you'll see that in it's a Form 7 with paragraphs referenced. So then, of course, it steps into the FAA. One of the things that we do at Vertical Bridge is just it's an outreach type program, but we believe that we're all better if it's an informed industry. So if you have questions about what you have and whether or not it's compliant, always feel free to reach out to me. It's encouraged by my company, and I'm always glad to help. So the new one, the new circular, let's out. And I know on the bottom bar this says private and confidential. I'm going to remove that. But if you have, if any of you would like a copy of this presentation, I'll be glad to just get in touch with Larry or myself, and I've got my contact information that'll be coming up here shortly. There are other publications that are important. The AC 150/5345-43J tells the parameters by which the lights have to work. Then the what we call the 53D addendum is a listing of all manufactured products that have gone through testing and been certified to the 43J specs, or before, as a matter of fact. There's only one testing company for this. It's called Intertech, or ETL. Any of you who may know Jeremy Downs from his days at Dielectric, Jeremy works at ETL now. And of course, here's a link to the Title 47 as well. So when we're looking at older configurations, you know, a lot of people look at the new advisory circular, the diagrams in the back in the appendix, which are so very important. I think the chapter 1, actually before chapter 1, is the most important part of any new issue, because it tells the changes made from the previous version of the AC. But they'll look at these and then look up at the tower and they'll say, gosh, my tower doesn't match that diagram. In fact, it's way off. Well, that can still be a compliant lighting system. So before you start tearing down, rebuilding, take a closer look at that. Look up the date when the tower was built, the date that it was filed. Look at the last determination, whether it be FAA or FCC. So this was an example of this, a typical example, and it was kind of wild. I think this happened in Virginia, actually, but the question from the service crew was, this tower has 2 tiers of LED reds at night plus a dual medium. What it amounted to was, at the top, there were no red lights at night. So in the daytime, you had white at night, but the top wasn't really marked well. The answer was, yes, it is compliant. It's an old FCC Form 715. When you look at those paragraphs, take a look, because you're alpha, so you're 1, 3, so forth, and so on. Those are the, I'm sorry, numeric, 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, so on. Those are actually indications of red lighting, with the exception of 21. If it's A, B, D, H alpha type, then that indicates you have white lighting required on the tower. These 21, reference to 21 is always something I look for, because a lot of publications, even they'll have or people contacting you and they'll say, well, you know, the FAA chapters are 1, 3, 8, and 21. Well, there's never been a chapter 21 in an FAA determination. So easily you can tell by that reference, it's in all of the FCC determinations, because that's where it tells you you either have to run lighting 24 hours a day, or you have to have a photocell on there. So that's the quick way to tell if it's FCC or FAA. And of course, there's a link to the Form 715. We did actually make a change on this tower because we didn't feel like it was safe at night without red lighting up there. So we we went a step further and added red lighting with permission from the FAA. Here's another example, and this, kind of skewed picture here, and that's exactly how it comes from the FAA website. So whoever scanned these in, they didn't quite get them squared up on the scanner. But if you'll notice on this, let's say if you're looking at a 350-foot tower, there's a top beacon, then 2 levels of markers. When you go way, way back, as an example, the WSM Tower in Brentwood, Tennessee, Nashville area, has the Grand Ole Opry Tower. It's so famous. It's a Blaw-Knox double diamond, and it's got a beacon on top and then 3 levels of marker lights underneath. And it's totally compliant with the determination that is still in place for that tower. It's a grandfathered determination. So again, old days, the image on the right shows you the on a mid-tier beacon, just one single beacon inside the tower. And it was actually in some of the wording on early ACs that said to place it on the inside of the tower. Well, now we don't want an obstruction larger than 7/8 of an inch in front of the beacon. So you have to have 2 beacons in that case. Now, where is this going to matter? If you've got a red and paint tower, you don't want to paint anymore. You want to add white lighting to that. You just made it a dual. So you have to bring it up to today's spec when you change that lighting. You're grandfathered until you make a change. But when you change it from red to dual, now you've got to bring it up. And at that midpoint, you're going to be required to have 2 beacons on the outside of the tower. Okay. So again, other changes that work to the advantage of the broadcast industry, and many people know what I mean by this, but if you've got in the old days, if you had a 510 up to 690-foot tower, so anywhere in that range, it was really 500 feet to 700 feet. You'd go usually with red and paint bands for your lighting and marking, because you didn't want to pay for this expensive high intensity system and installation and the maintenance and everything. You didn't want to pay for that on that size tower. Now, if you got up into the 1,000+ range, okay, now it makes more sense. But we avoided marking those with high intensity when you could. Well, the FAA says now, and it changed in 2015, that limit goes up to 700 feet. So if you've got a 550 or 600-foot tower, you don't want to paint it. Paint's not required for maintenance or anything like that. You can apply with the FAA, and you can get, in most cases, you can get the new determination that actually would eliminate the need for paint, and you intensity, and it's about a quarter the cost of the high intensity systems. A few things changed that I wasn't so crazy about. So I've got some of the older grandfathered towers. I've got one that's 465 feet tall, and within of that tower, I've got a shorter one. The shorter tower is 211 feet tall. So it's the initial FAA and FCC determinations there spelled out the shorter tower required no marking, no lighting, because it was shadowed by the taller tower. There are a lot of those. Many of you have got those cases. Part of that is, it just worked across the country with AM arrays as well. Nowadays, it's altogether different. If you're going to refile completely on a site, you have to have shadowing on 3 sides of your tower you want to have shadowed. And all 3 structures have to be taller with marking. So the FAA will consider your remarks, but if you just send it in without asking for the shadowing, if you just send it in and say, okay, here's what I've got, it's next to another tower, chances are you're going to get turned down. You really need to make a case for why it should be shadowed. Another big question that people ask me is with like for like replacement. And they'll say, hey, I've got incandescent lighting on my tower, and I really want to replace that with LEDs. Do I need to file with the FAA? No, you don't need to refile as long as the configuration is the same. It's all called a beacon, is an L864 red beacon. If you're replacing an L864 with an L864, the FAA is okay with that. If you add white, or if you want to do away with the markers, then you need to refile and get the avian. And I'll show you a little bit more about that in just a moment. Monitoring requirements remain unchanged in, since the last FAA circular. If you're doing visual monitoring, or you've got a tower watcher, someone who checks on that lighting, one of the things I saw as a consultant, I worked in, with legal firms and court cases, and all too often there were no log books. The FCC requires you to manually walk out there and look at that tower. If you're not on automated monitoring, the tower watcher has to keep a log every 24 hours of checking that. And the log is kept for 2 years. So if you're worried about what happened, you've got books and books of your tower watcher checking on these things 3 and 4 years ago. The FCC only requires the past 2 years. It is good if you've got a place to maintain that old information, just in case you do have an event and you have to go to court. You've got a long history there. A little bit of difference between compliance and exposure. Okay. So, and by the way, on most of these third-party cases where if it's like Flash Technology or ITL, some of the others, if they're doing this, it's automated monitoring. They're watching your lines for you. They automatically keep that 2-year history. It's backed up on their servers. So another thing that comes across so often, it's incredible, but and you see this throughout all industries, but people will, they've heard about avian friendly systems. Now, if you've got a tower that's taller than 350 feet tall, you can do away with your markers. Well, yes, but you've got to, I've seen a lot of people just disconnect and walk away. You can't do that. First, the big thing with this is apply with the FAA and get a determination for avian friendly before you start taking your markers down. And realize that when you do this, you have to meet the current criteria for configuration. So let's go back to my example of the WSM tower. It's got the one beacon at the top. It's got the 3 tiers of lighting, marker lights underneath. So you can't just say, oh, I want to turn off those 3 lower tiers. Not that those folks would ever do that. They're very safety conscious. But you would have to add lights at the proper level and bring it up to today's standards before the FAA would allow you to discontinue those markers. Another part of that avian slice is you have to have a flash rate of 27 to 33 flashes per minute. So 30 flashes per minute, plus or minus 3. Again, look in the back of the new advisory circular, and you can see the required configurations before you step into that. But it's something that a lot of people are getting wrong. It's chance and opportunity, a real opportunity for liability exposure should something occur. Or, at the lesser side, even for an NOV or NAL from the FCC. So before I step into the big changes of the -1M, do we have any questions on this first section? And seeing none immediately, I will go forward. And we can always, if you have a question, we can bring it up at the end of the presentation. So LED lighting has been out there for a long time, and it's we've got high intensity LED lights on many broadcast towers. So the big change on the latest AC addresses, the largest change addresses LED lighting, and it's for safety factor because with night vision goggles or night vision screens, you can't see the red LEDs in most cases. So if you have an older incandescent system, you're okay. It shows up fine with night vision goggles. If you have xenon, it's showing up very well through night vision goggles. You have what's called an IR footprint. So, IR signature, actually, I'm sorry. But if you have LED, even the LED marker lights, this part's really important to you. So NVGs, have really taken off, especially with air ambulance, with SWAT teams, with search and rescue, many areas outside the military are using night vision goggles. So let's start back at the beginning with LEDs, the marker lights, and you may have markers on your tower that you don't realize are LED. So that could be a problem going forward. You just got to look at this. They came out in 1999. The red beacons came out in 2001. Dialight was the first manufacturer to introduce the LED lighting on a wide scale basis across the US. They're still a huge leading manufacturer today. LA65, which is your white medium intensity, came out in 2007. And the high intensity LEDs came out, I'm thinking about 5 or 6 years ago as well. I think it was 2014. So in 2008, though, the Canadian Air Force had a report from a pilot saying, hey, I can't see these LEDs. It's a good thing I had a co-pilot that didn't have night vision goggles on. He spotted a tower I didn't. So there was actually a near miss in Canada. This got published. The FAA recognized the issue, then they started publishing notifications on it. The manufacturers, again, Dialight started with this one, but they started putting IR equipped beacons and markers in the field, selling those. Several manufacturers have just standardized on this because they wanted to put out safe equipment. So finally in 2018, the FAA said, hey, we've got to get really serious about this. We just had a near miss as well in the US. So just to take a look, if you didn't know towers, if you're just flying, you're a pilot who's not familiar with what to look for in a tower, you wouldn't see the tower in this shot through night vision goggles or a night vision device. And it's over there circled, of course. It's kind of hard. I mean, it's still hard to see. So this is with and without. So this is a ground shot of a tower shot through the NVGs on the right, but without the night vision goggles on the left. So you can see what the problem is, the big area. A lot of verbiage here. I'm not going to try to go through everything, but the other thing that the FAA pointed out was a problem was, let's say that you've got a taller tower. It's a 750-foot tower. You've got 3 levels of lighting, LED lights. So now they're the old style lights and they're not NVG compatible. So I replace a beacon on one of those lower tiers, or I replace one of the marker lights, a flashing marker, even on a short tower, with one that's now equipped with, it is NVG friendly. And what happens? The pilot only sees that one lower light or that one lower marker. So the FAA said at the very least, we have to replace lights above that, and finally settled on the top beacon. So if you replace, let's say it's a 2,000-foot tower, and you've got on your very lowest level, you've got one beacon that you have to replace, and you install something that's NVG compatible. And by the way, the FAA is not allowing, they're not certifying anything that is not NVG compatible now. So you replace one of the lower lights and you find out it is NVG equipped. Now you have to replace your top beacon. If you've got a tall broadcast tower with a level of high intensity LEDs, you have to replace that entire top tier because there are 3 beacons up there, or 3 light fixtures, high intensity, and you have to replace all 3. So watch for that. That's going to be the big pitfall coming up, and it's a severe safety issue. Now, once you've got these IR devices inside the beacon, they are monitored just like the light. If the IR device goes out, you have to file a NOTAM on that. So I work with a fellow named Reed Booth. Most of you are familiar with him. He was at Flash Technology as well. We've known each other for many years. And Reed is also a person that you can reach out to at Vertical Bridge. But the first stop, you probably want to call your lighting manufacturer. If you have to order a replacement beacon, then get a serial number from your controller and have that ready and ask that manufacturer, are the pre-existing fixtures on this tower, are they IR signature, are they NVG compatible fixtures? You don't want to get yourself in trouble with this. And the big thing is, it's not defined at all in broadcast world. All of the broadcast engineers and throughout the years of NAB, I was broadcast sales manager for 16 years at Flash. Through all of that, the one thing I carried away is these people are very concerned with safety to the public. These are the people who go in after a hurricane or tornado, and they jump to the studio and they power up by car batteries, whatever they had to do in the old days. And you guys still know you've done that in the past and you still do it today. You are the safety people. When people talk about heroes after these events, I'm firmly seated that the broadcast engineers are huge heroes. I'm just proud to be associated with all of them. But so do realize that this is another safety factor, and it's something that we all have to work together to watch. So I kept most of this fairly brief, but that's the crux. That's the big part of what goes on. Again, one of the things with Flash Technology that I did was I went out and got my electrical contractor's license because I was designing risers and we had elevators, platform circuits, we had elevator limit switches, heater circuits, everything. So, and I designed those systems. So any questions that you may have, feel free, especially right now, if you can bring them up, the rest of the group may benefit by that.
Richard, how would an average engineer know if his lighting system complied with the night vision situation, or if they needed to comply with it? How would they know that?
So there are a couple of ways, Larry. If you're, and one of our customers actually brought this up to me. So he has rural and he has urban towers, tall towers, and he started on the LED train when they first came out. So he had one of the county SWAT officers at one location that introduced him to others, and they actually looked at the lighting at night through NVGs, and they could tell, you know, whether you could see the light or not through the NVGs. But I still think the best way to do that is to have your any old information you've got on that system, whether you've got serial numbers, whether you've got a controller serial number, or you've even got the company that sold the system to you, and get back with the manufacturer. Ask them. Good news on that too. Of course, you know, Vertical Bridge was primarily, it was the GTP, Global Tower Partners, prior to selling to American Tower Corporation. And then Vertical Bridge was founded in 2014. Reed Booth was there. He was the first employee in operations, and Reed made it a point to order NVG compatible lighting since the very first day. So the takeaway from that is the manufacturers, most of the major manufacturers had their beacons equipped for this back as early as 2015.
Okay, a couple other questions here, and they both sort of deal with monitoring. If they're so closely tied together, if you're on a tower, if you're leasing space on somebody else's tower, what is the requirement from the station itself in doing any kind of logging? And secondly, if you are logging, you're checking your tower lights every 24 hours, are you required to actually make a notation that you did check them each 24 hours? It seems to be in the actual rule, if you read part 17, it says you have to make a written notation of any malfunction of the tower lights. It doesn't actually say that you have to make a notation that you checked them. So you might address those two items.
So yeah, what's generally accepted, and I've seen this on the back end when the FCC forces an inquiry, if you're doing the manual logbooks, and they really want you to check this in all modes. So if it's a day mode and night mode, you have to check it twice. And they, you know, so, and it's really the maximum interval is 24 hours. So you can, you know, you can check it a little bit before, but you should check it on maximum intervals of 24 hours. And I've seen these that were upheld in court and approved by the FCC that, you know, where they came out and jotted down on 10/18 of 2017, all fixtures were working on the tower, all lighting was working. That's all it said. It did give a time and date. So I'm sorry, there were two parts to that question.
Yeah, well, one had to do with the logging that you addressed. The other had to do with the fact that if a station lease space on somebody else's tower, is there any obligation to the station legally that they should keep a watch on the tower lights, or good engineering practice, what should they do if they're leasing space?
So here's the thing with the FCC, with the FAA, everything is on the tower owner, period. With the FCC, it's the tower owner and all tenants, but they exhaust those measures. We recently saw that, I think it was last year before, in California, where the tower, basically the owner of the tower abandoned the tower, walked away. Even the rent checks that the tenants were trying to pay in were coming back in the mail. So the FCC did step in and they imposed a notice of liability, so a fine, but they retracted the fine later. They dropped the fine part of that. So the requirement is that that tenant should know that, for instance, if you're a vertical bridge tenant, you can check with us. We'll even issue a statement to you that says this site, this ASR number is being monitored by Flash Technology or ITL, whatever the case may be. So you'll have something from the owner. That's your due diligence. That's really, you don't even have to have that part, but if you ever get questioned, it's nice to have, and we're happy to give those to you.
Yeah, I know there had been several cases around the country where that had actually popped up, where the commission actually assured everybody that the broadcaster could be held responsible if the owner of the tower did not make the necessary repairs. It could fall back on the tenant.
That's true, Larry. And another thing about that is I would encourage everyone, if you see that the owner of the tower is not being diligent, they're not monitoring the systems, they're not doing what they should do. There's a light that's now the lighting, let's say that it's bad weather and you're in a, for instance, North Dakota in the wintertime, it may be months before you can get a crew safely on that tower with falling ice and everything considered to repair the lighting system, but the NOTAM should be there. They should have a NOTAM found if there's a failure in there. So what the tenant should do, in my opinion, is, and in most of the FCC writings, is keep a watch on that. If you see an outage, check and just make sure that a NOTAM has been found. Check with the owner. I could pull that up if it's one of our towers and shoot you the NOTAM information so that you can tell that it definitely has been found. If you've got an outage or you've got someone who is just not paying attention to that tower and they're not doing the proper things, it is your duty by FCC rules to inform the FCC. So you can't just stand by and say, gosh, I wish they'd do a better job. You have to actively get involved and say, as a tenant on this tower, we've had a light out for 60 days and there are no NOTAMs on that light.
And so you're protecting yourself in that way.
Absolutely. And if you've got a tower owner, you're the tenant. If you've got a tower owner who's not working with you, not willing to work with you that way, it's something that needs to be corrected.
One other, I'll just make a comment here, and you can comment on it as well. When I do alternative broadcast inspections at stations, I always try to look at their 854, their antenna structure registration number, and look at their actual license for that. And so sometimes you'll run into a situation where a facility has been purchased or sold, but when you sell a station or purchase a station, the ownership and the responsibility of that tower doesn't really change until you file that 850, I think it's 854. It doesn't change until you actually file that with the commission. So you could actually sell your station and still maintain ownership and not know it. Is that correct?
That is correct. And the FCC, as there was an unusual case that happened with the carrier where a gentleman found out that the FCC wasn't following up on transactions. So he actually had the FRN number and password for this carrier. He transferred 40 towers into his name, took out bank loans, everything else, then transferred those back to the carrier. Since there was no notification, no one knew the better until he was caught, it's fraud. So So it happens with this too. And really the guidelines are, we have 5 days from the time we buy a tower. We have 5 days. You actually have 48 hours to reach out to the seller and start the transfer process. So what you have to do is provide your FRN number and your entity name that to which this tower will be transferred. You supply that to the seller. Now, the buyer has done the first step, their requirement, but the seller is to complete this transfer on their side within 5 days. And so in everything that we do in the way, and we've picked up, actually, I think at this point, we're into close to 1,000 new acquisitions this year, or more actually. But anyway, on all of those, you'll see that we do on any FCC ASR, we do that transfer right away. It's a big step. And Larry, I would compare it to this. If you sell a car and you sell it for cash and somebody buys this car, but they don't change the title into their name, you didn't follow up with that part, and they're running down the interstate and they get into a bad accident with another vehicle, you're going to get sued. You're going to get sued as the owner of the car. You are the legal owner of that car. So that's why I encourage anyone who's selling a tower to go ahead and get that process started. That's the news that we give them as soon as we paid for the tower.
So I always encourage stations to make sure that the engineer take a look at that and make sure that somewhere back in history that tower was not, make sure that the ownership of the tower was changed. I've run into that a couple of times where it's got the wrong name as the owner of the tower. And they said, well, we own the tower, we bought the station. Well, no, I know you paid money for it, but you didn't change the ownership over like you said with the story about the car. So that's important for engineers to do that, to look at that, to make sure the right name is on that ASR.
Exactly, and you can just punch in on Google or any search engine, FCC ASR search, and it'll take you straight to the page where you can punch in your ASR number and you can see whose name it is in. That's another thing, Larry, is I've heard people say, oh, yes, we bought it, it's ours now. Well, not in the eyes of the FCC if it hasn't been transferred.
Another thing I'll mention is that ASR documentation, that really needs to be, although I don't think the FCC pushes this very much, but you need to have a copy of that. And now that the public file is online, I encourage stations to get a copy of that ASR and place it in the best place to place it is in the other documents folder there on the main page. That's where you can put stuff that are not necessarily part of the public file, but it is something that if an inspector comes in, whether they're from the commission or or an alternative inspector, that's something they'll want to see, and that's just a good place to hang on to that. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's really critical if something happens on a site. And we always we've all known people who came out of high school or college, went into being a broadcast engineer, and when they retired, they worked part-time, and still, when they walked away, they had no incidents on their tower at all. But I can also tell you, I've worked with a lot of people who have owned towers where the tower was hit by a hot air balloon or a helicopter or a plane. That happens. It does happen. The more documentation you have, the more your attorney has to work with, because it doesn't matter. You can have all lights operational, all the markings fresh, everything that you're supposed to do. If someone hits your tower, you're going to get sued. You are going to get sued. So to defend that lawsuit, I would absolutely keep anything in the way of documentation that you possibly can, that you're required to keep, and go a little bit further.
Sure, that's good news to do that. We always do try to make sure you keep good documentation. The commission loves documentation, so with anything, just transmitter inspections and stuff that way, so the towers go in that same line. Richard, we appreciate your presentation today, and you see Richard's information there on the screen. If you have any questions, you can reach him there either at his email address or give him a call. And even if you're not a customer of or using Vertical Bridge, I'm sure you'll be happy to answer people's questions.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thanks again, and thank you for being with us. And we'll probably have you on another time to talk about some more, because this is really, really important. All right, let's see. We'll just go ahead and close out. Unless anybody has any information they need to share. One of the things I want to mention to you that this particular series of engineering webinars, this one today, has been recorded, and we'll actually have it up on our ABA YouTube site. If you want to see this one or any of the others that we have done over the last few months, or any of the videos, we have a ton of videos up there of some of our classes, webinars or seminars we have done with various people around the country. They're all available, and just simply go to YouTube and search for ABA Engineering Academy, and you'll see all the videos, and you'll see all the past engineering webinars that we have up anyway. Our next engineering webinar will actually be in December on the third Tuesday. Those of you who will remember Lester Roadhog Moran, he always said same time, same station. Well, we're always on the third Tuesday. This will be December 15th will be our next engineering webinar. So thanks everybody for attending, and we'll see you in December.